Day and Remembrance Day. We're very pleased you could join us. We know everyone has a lot of Zoom events to choose from, so thank you for choosing ours this afternoon. I'd like to especially welcome our BABC members and all of our guests. Welcome to our panelists. Welcome to our event partners. Thank you for being with us. And thank you so much to the Consulate for partnering with us in presenting this event today. So my name is Tansy Jeffries. I'm the president of BABC Miami. I'm also an international tax partner with RSM, and I am very proud to be your moderator for today's event. I'm also joined by Lynette Robbins. Lynette is a consultant to BABC Miami. Lynette is our Zoom meeting host today. So if you have any questions, if you have questions for the panel, please do reach out to Lynette using your chat function. And for those of you who are not familiar with BABC Miami, we are a non-profit business organization. So we offer business development, networking, and educational opportunities to our members. And we also seek to foster cultural ties between the UK and South Florida. And we do that in collaboration with the Consulate. So again, thank you, Consul General Brent, for all of your support. We appreciate working with the Consulate and the team there to put on events like this for our members. BABC is also a member of the British American Business Network. So that is the largest transatlantic business network. We have 22 chapters across the UK and North America. And so if you're interested in learning more, either about BABC Miami or about our transatlantic network, please reach out to us after the event today, and we would love to welcome you as members as well. So please consider joining us if you enjoyed the event today. And with that, I'm going to ask Nicolette to say a few words. So I'm going to pass over to Her Majesty's Consul General Nicolette Brent. Nicolette's going to provide some more insight into the events that we're celebrating today, and tell us why it's particularly special that we're celebrating them together.
Thank you, Tansy. Thanks very much. Good afternoon, everyone. And thanks very much to the British American Business Council Miami for partnering with the Consulate on this event. It's just really important that although we couldn't do a physical Remembrance Day event like we did last year at Miami's Woodlawn Cemetery, we wanted to make sure that we spent the time to discuss both Armistice and Veterans Day, what it means to us to remember all those who fought and who continue to fight for our freedom. So thank you to the panelists, and thank you to everyone who's joining us. Special thanks to my colleague Andreas Siegel, who's Germany's Consul General here in Miami, and as also to Commissioner Diaz. So happy birthday to the US Marine Corps. And I was about to try and do a hoorah, but she'll probably correct me.
Hoorah.
Before we start, I want to take the opportunity to set out the UK's military presence here in Florida, and the importance of the UK-US military relationship. So we've got about 120 military personnel spaced throughout Florida. Two of those are with us today from both US Southcom and US CENTCOM. I will let them introduce themselves. We've also got service personnel at the air bases in the Panhandle and up in Jacksonville. Plus we have a couple of service personnel in the Joint Interagency Task Force down in Key West. And across the US, we have about 2,500 military personnel and their families spread across 28 different states. The UK and the US are indispensable allies and preeminent partners when it comes to security, defence and foreign policy. The UK-US defence relationship and cooperation is the broadest, deepest and most advanced of any two countries in the world. We work together to combat a range of threats. Our UK forces are deliberately designed to operate seamlessly alongside the US, and we both train together and we fight together. Today's armed forces are inspired by their predecessors, and we continue the proud traditions of service and achievements of those who've gone before. We'll never forget the sacrifices that previous generations have made, and we take this opportunity each year to honour the fallen. So this is my opportunity to say thank you very much to our armed forces who continue to keep Britain, our allies and our friends safe as they tackle those threats overseas. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much for those words, Nicolette. So I'd now like to take the opportunity to introduce our 4 panelists who will be the star of our show today. So from the American military, we're delighted to welcome Miami-Dade County Commissioner Jose Tepe Diaz, veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps. And as Nicolette mentioned, Marine Corps celebrating its 245th birthday today, which is quite astonishing. And then we have Command Master Chief Aaron Zimmer of U.S. Coast Guard 7th District. And then from the British military, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Captain Stephen Anderson, OBE, of the Royal Navy and UK Liaison Officer to U.S. Southern Command. And then finally, we have Lieutenant Colonel Roland Brading, Royal Marines, Operational Planning Officer to U.S. Central Command. So thank you all for joining us today. So for our first question, I'm going to ask you all if you could please introduce yourselves, give us a little bit more information about yourselves personally. And in particular, it'd be great to understand more about the branch of the military in which you serve and also your specific role. And Commissioner Diaz, if I can start with you first, could you also elaborate on how your military service intersects with your county government role, please?
First, I got to learn to unmute here, but we'll go from there. First and foremost, thank you for this, and thank you for a great introduction, and thank you, Council General Brett, for always doing this. And yes, we could not be this year in the cemetery, but we're here anyways, and it's virtual, but it works. So with that, I am proud to be a Marine. And to all those out there, as this was said before, happy birthday. It's a 245th birthday, and we're very, very proud of that. I went into the service because I really, I owe this country so much. This country is an incredible country, and we came from Cuba, and we were Cuban refugees, and we showed up, and we were blessed that the open and the United States let us come here. So therefore, when it came time, I went into the Marine Corps because I was told that that was the toughest branch, and it was hard, and it was it. So as a young man, I decided that's the way to go. I went in and I went through Parris Island, and through Parris Island, I then went in and got what they call a jet mech title, mechanic of aviation of jets, and ended up being a crew chief on an A4F squadron out of Cecil Field, Jacksonville, which was VMA 142. I was very proud of that until the time where we went from Miami all the way to Jacksonville. And basically, I started out as reservist. I signed up to go active. And then we went through a major injury during that time. And I stayed in the reserves for the rest of the period that I was in. I went to the tow unit, the Miami tow unit, with 2 years left of service. And when it came time to re-up, I was on my way to basically Washington to become a sniper in the United States Marine Corps. I was designated shooter in my unit. But I happened to meet a beautiful young lady, and the plans changed, and I ended up going to civilian life and getting married, and that's the way it went. So I served approximately 6 years, and then I was out and then started serving in other ways. Now, I think I talked a lot. Was there a second part to the question?
That's wonderful. Thank you. And can you tell us about how it impacts what you're doing in your government role as well now, in terms of your military background?
Well, let me tell you something. Anybody that served in any other branches, and I have 2 great examples of another country that we fought hand to hand when needed in many wars and many battles and so on. But anybody that served in any other branches of the military, it gets a leg up, in my opinion, when you do certain jobs, especially politics. Look, the way to be able to adapt, improvise, and move forward when you're in the military, that they teach you that constantly. In politics, it's a full contact game also. It's not easy. It's very difficult. It's easier to just rank and file and just follow orders than having to deal with the political side of things. Very difficult. And I think my experience that I served although a short one, was one that, as they say, once a Marine, always a Marine. Well, once in the service always stays with you. And it's up to you what you want to make of that service and what you've learned. And what I've done is taken all that I've been able to learn and experience in life and put it through in my political career. And it's been very useful many, many times. And I thank God for being the ability of serving first in the military, in the Marine Corps, and then now serving the people of Miami-Dade County.
Great, thank you so much. And now maybe if I can ask Command Master Chief Zimmer, would you answer the same questions, give us a bit of insight into yourself and your role?
Great, thank you, Council General Brent. Appreciate you kicking this off, and it's a real privilege to be online with Captain Anderson and Colonel Brading and Commissioner Diaz. I know my boss, Rear Admiral Eric Jones, the commander of the 7th District, and about the 44,000 other Coast Guard men and women around the world wish the Marine Corps a very happy 245th birthday. We are not quite as old in the Coast Guard. We only go back 230 years. I actually enlisted on August 4th, 1990, which was the 200th birthday of what we recognize as the birthday of the United States Coast Guard. When in 1790, Alexander Hamilton petitioned Congress to create the Revenue Marine and the first 10 cutters. And so I have gone on about 30 years now, serving in the Coast Guard. I am a boat driver by trade, with most of my time spent on shore-based small boats and patrol boats, doing search and rescue and law enforcement activities. So my current role is as the Command Master Chief for the 7th District, which is the senior enlisted leader. I report to Admiral Jones, and my job is to advise him on efficient and effective management of the day-to-day activities and to enhance policy strategy and outreach to the workforce. So our region here covers about 1.8 million square miles. The states of South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands, and then the entire Caribbean basin down to South America. Overall, we have 34 nations and territories within our area of responsibility. It's just it's a real treat to be able to spend some time with you today. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So I'm now going to ask Captain Anderson, would you please also answer the same question?
Thank you, and good afternoon to those who have managed to dial in. And as disappointing as it is not to be face to face and not to be at the cemetery to recognise the efforts of those who went before us, it is a delight to be here. And thanks very much to the British American Business Council to invite myself and Rolly to represent the UK, and to Commissioner Diaz and to Command Master Chief Zimmer. I think it is a shame, we're showing the maritime branch of our services between the Marines, the Coast Guard and the Navy, but there are others out there, and we are a small branch when it comes to those other services dominated by Army in particular. But it is an absolute pleasure to be here. I joined the Royal Navy after 10 years in industry, so I was a relatively late joiner. I joined as aircrew. I always wanted to fly helicopters, and circumstances didn't allow post-education through personal choices. And then, for fun, without any pressure, just went to fly helicopters. And here I am 22 years later, still in the service. And the pleasure of that and the delight has been the variety. So first half of my career was flying helicopters from frigates and destroyers in all four corners of the globe, and moving on to second in command of a Type 45 destroyer, one of our newest ships in the Navy at the time, and then into commanding the Type 23 frigate as captain of HMS Sutherland. And the pleasure for that particular task was we were sponsored by Macallan, the distiller. So we were well looked after, the dry ships in the US Navy and the Coast Guard, but Royal Navy ships, we had plenty of Macallan single malt to keep us going throughout that time. And then finally, continuing in my career, I've served in tactical headquarters, operational headquarters, and strategic headquarters at Ministry of Defence in London, and now find myself as a United Kingdom liaison officer to US Southern Command here in Doral, in Miami, and about half of my career is spent close and personal with the US through everything we do, and I think that's key to the strong relationship we have. We've had our differences hundreds of years ago, but everyone has. But in the since World War I in particular, and why we're here talking today, our relationship has never been stronger, and it will continue to be as strong regardless of the political situations in each of our areas, and regardless of Brexit and a variety of other circumstances. Pure military activity is the key to pretty much everything we do. And again, looking forward to continue the discussion this afternoon, hopefully taking some questions where we can move on from there and inform and educate. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Captain Anderson. So, Lieutenant Colonel Grading, last but not least.
Yes, last but not least, but thank you very much for having us on. And firstly, as a fellow Marine, I need to extend my birthday wishes to Commissioner Diaz. Only 245 years old. The Royal Marines are 356 years old, so we will continue to look on you as the baby brothers of the service that you are. I've been in the Royal Marines. I commissioned into the Royal Marines in 1998, so I've also served 22 years. This is my second time working in US Central Command. I was previously based out here in 2017 through 2018 on a 9-month tour, and had the opportunity to come out again in July this year. Now, both of these tours working with the US have been sandwiched, or have sandwiched an appointment I did as the amphibious operations officer on board HMS Queen Elizabeth, which is our newest aircraft carrier. And during that 2 years, she spent a lot of time over in the US. So over the last 3 and a bit years, I seem to have spent more time in the US than I have over in the UK. The job that I do at US Central Command is in operational planning for the Middle East. So Iraq, Syria in the Defeat ISIS campaign is very much where I do the planning for both the US Central Command personnel that are working out in the Middle East, but also the coalition forces that are there as well. During this 22 years, I've served with the US on numerous occasions. 2 tours of Afghanistan working alongside the US, and one of my tours in Iraq was alongside the US as well. So very much looking forward to the panel this afternoon and just continuing the work that I seem to have spent the vast majority of my time tied to the US. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And I have just noted that the Canadian Consul General, Susan Harper, has also joined us today. So welcome, Consul General Susan Harper, and thank you for being with us this afternoon. So with that, I'm going to move on to my second question. And then after that, we will be opening it up to the audience for Q&A. So if you haven't already, please do think about what questions you would like to pose to our panel. And you can submit them via the chat to Lunaire, and she will unmute you to ask your question. I believe you can also use the virtual hand raise function if you have a question, and we'll put you in the queue. So for my second question, I'd like to ask each of you to share with us what the meaning and significance of these particular days are to you, Veterans Day and Remembrance Day. And you can share both from a personal perspective or also thinking about what it means to our communities and to our nations. So maybe we can go in reverse order. So Colonel Lieutenant Grading, did you want to start on this one?
Absolutely. So Remembrance Day is a very special one for me, actually. Both my grandfathers served in the Second World War. One of them was served in the Royal Navy in the Far East. So this would have been 75 years since the end of the Second World War, very significant for him. And then last year was the 75th anniversary of D-Day, which again was my other grandfather was involved in. So I have a personal connection back to at least to the Second World War of why Remembrance is significant. But over the last 22 years of my service, I've been fortunate enough to serve overseas with some very brave men and women who either didn't return home or who did return home through with both physical and mental scars. So for me, it's an opportunity each year to both reflect on those that came before us and who sort of set the tone for how the UK and the US conduct themselves in operations around the world, protecting our freedoms, but also as a personal perspective of remembering, taking the opportunity to remember those that I have served with who unfortunately didn't make it back.
Yes, thank you very much. Very important points to remember there, and certainly a time for us all to look back. And my grandfather was on submarines and minesweepers in the Second World War as well. So he's told me many of his experiences from that time, and I think it's very important that we don't forget everything that our relatives did for us as well. So Captain Anderson, would you like to go next?
Yeah, absolutely, Tansy, thank you. And I think I grew up in a non-military family, but you know, as with everyone in the United Kingdom, you know, Remembrance Sunday, the second Sunday in November, and Remembrance Day, Armistice Day on the 11th of November, it's such an important occasion, and it's only now, having served, and you know, not repeating the points that Rolly made, because you know, each and every one of those is so relevant to us currently serving, through our own experiences, through our own exposure, and what we have witnessed in the past. Highs and lows, you know, where we've been. But this year in particular, I think, you know, the impact and implications of COVID and everything we do, in particular, as we look to Remembrance Day, the weekend just passed, and then into how we would normally recognize it tomorrow. It's, you know, 2020 has been the most challenging of years. But what we can't do is neglect our duty to remember, and that is a moral obligation that we have, and rightfully so. So, you know, Remembrance Day itself is a time for commemorating and honouring those who have served and sacrificed, and ultimately those who lost their lives on active service in all conflicts. And that's not just in World War I, but coming through World War II, and then everything we have seen collectively since, through Korea, Vietnam for the US, and then coming into modern day conflict in Iraq and Afghanistan in particular, and as Rolly covered with, through the fight in ISIS in the Middle East. The numbers that have died on combat have naturally come down in the recent years, but it doesn't make it any easier for anyone when, in a modern world in particular, and COVID this year hasn't helped. I think if I try to say, what does it mean to me? My memories are the same as many in the United Kingdom. You know, on the second Sunday in November since 1928, BBC Radio have broadcast the ceremony that has happened in London. And then it's been on TV unbroken since 1937. So we in the UK, prior to serving, you know, we would take our moment to reflect and recognise. And this year, I think the sadness in particular is that, you know, the first time in 100 years in the United Kingdom that those veterans who have served have not been able to come together on that day and march down the Mall and pass the cenotaph and take the credit for what they've done, you know. So that's where I think it sort of hits a little bit harder this year in particular. And when we're away from it, you know, it doesn't mean we cannot stop, we cannot take that time, and that's exactly what we'll be doing tomorrow. And ultimately, you know, taking part, whatever political or religious beliefs, that is not important. It's all about coming together, and all of those who have served to defend, you know, our democratic freedom and what is our way of life, and unite faith, culture, backgrounds throughout. So it's so important now, regardless of the fact whether we're serving or not. It's our obligation and our duty to reflect and remember at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for those remarks, Captain Anderson. Commander Master Chief Zimmer, can you tell us a bit about what Veterans Day means for you?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. For me, I think Veterans Day, and if I include Remembrance Sunday, it's about service and sacrifice, and recognizing both of those, for those who have served and those who have paid the ultimate price in defense of our freedoms and the freedoms of our friends around the world. You know, it's for us, Veterans Day, it's
I think we may have lost my Master Chief Zimmer. Annette, can you confirm that you can hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I think we'll hopefully let Command Master Chief Jim Zimmer rejoin, and then we'll go back to him shortly. So Commissioner Diaz, would you like to give us your thoughts on the question?
Yes, you know, we have in the States, we have Memorial Day that it's really well, Master Chief is back. You want to go ahead with him?
Sure. Okay. Sorry. Thank you. Command Master Chief, back to you. You just cut out as you were starting to respond.
Sorry about that. I don't know where I stopped. I looked up and all your faces were frozen. So you know, for me, this is really about service and sacrificing, and recognizing that, you know, those who have served to protect us and those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our freedoms around the world, but both in our, I think, for me, in our own United States forces and in our allied forces. And when we look back, the history of Veterans Day, you know, starting as Armistice Day, recognizing the end of World War I, and then becoming a real recognition of military service following the Second World War, you know, which is I think incredibly important today as we have moved to an all-volunteer force, and fewer and fewer. I don't know if it's the same in the UK, but in the US, we're seeing a lot of family business where you have generations continue to serve in the military, and fewer of the population on a whole have experience with the military. So I think it's important to publicly thank those who have assumed the burden and privilege of serving their nation, and trying to tell the stories and recognize those folks who choose to do so. You know, we also have Memorial Day in May, which started as Decoration Day following the US Civil War, when the graves were decorated. And then that became Memorial Day, which is honoring those who have perished in defense of this nation. So two separate holidays, very similar purposes, I believe, between the US and the UK. And I find it interesting that for Memorial Day, we use the red poppy. American Legion has a drive on that. Just as I see you all wearing your poppies today. And they both have the shared origin, you know, which was the Flanders Field poem. And it was a nurse, American nurse, that wore a red poppy to a meeting, and then it was adopted by the American Legion, just to recognize the service and sacrifice at that time. But it's, for me, it's really a way to just publicly say thank you to those who have served this weekend, and to make sure we never forget what previous generations and those of our current generation have sacrificed, so that we may continue to live in a free society.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for those remarks. Commissioner Diaz, back to you.
That's why I wanted him to go back on again, because he did such a good job. He said it extremely well. I'm going to take his comments too, because it is all about sacrifice and service. And you're right, we do have Memorial Day and we have Veterans Day. But to me, it's every day that we thank those that serve and those that are serving for us. You know, it's not free to be free. It costs, and it costs the lives of so many to get to have the right to say we're a free nation, and to actually live it. That's what's important, and that's what I see in Veterans Day. I see a combination of a lot of things. I see the sorrow of those that are not here to celebrate because they gave their maximum sacrifice to our countries and to our way of life. And then I see so many that come back that I was, as specified earlier today, that come back missing limbs and not in the same way they left, with a lot of issues and a lot of things, and they gave their sacrifice. So we celebrate along with them and thank them for everything they've done for our nations. And that's the same thing that I believe in, that it is not always sorrow for remembrance. And it's a constant thank you for everything that has happened, and that those that have served and given so much. And it's not just them, it's the families too that are out without their loved one, that they don't know if they're going to come back or not, and the perils and everything that they go through, and those and their children and so on. So I look at it as a big support, or a big thank you, and whether it's remembrance, or it's whether it's celebrating, dignifying them by bringing them up, doing a parade, doing everything we could do. That's that word, that continual thank you gets across. But I take it a little further, and I every day in my prayers is always to remember those in harm's way, especially downrange, and protecting our countries and our way of life. So to me, it's constant. And Memorial Day is one thing, and Veteran Day is, I look at it a little differently, but it's still the same thing because it's every day in my eyes.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So, Lynette, do we have any questions in the queue at the moment?
At this time, we do not. However, I could lead us with a question, if I may.
Sure, please do.
Could any of our panelists please share a favorite story you may have about your military service?
We have to keep this PG, right?
I'm happy to kick off, and mine will tie in actually with Remembrance Sunday. In 2014, which was the 350th anniversary of the Royal Marines, I had the great honour of commanding the Royal Marines detachment at the Cenotaph Parade in London. Now that was the 70th anniversary of D-Day and the 350th anniversary of the Royal Marines. So for me personally, it was a huge date in the calendar, and a great privilege to be commanding that detachment. And for me, what stuck out for me on that day was as the procession of veterans came past. And they came past in their thousands from every conflict from the Second World War through to present day, was the knowing nod or a wink from fellow commandos of old to the men under my command, and to see, almost visibly feel the chests of the Marines behind me expand by several inches when these veterans walked past. It was a huge privilege for me, and undoubtedly one of the highlights of my career, having that opportunity, especially on Remembrance Day.
That's a great story. Thank you. Any of our other want to share?
Nobody wants me to jump in on this one, right? Look, I'm going to say a story of a memorable time that basically we were detached, and we went BMA 142. We went on an mission to Yuma, Arizona, NAS Yuma, and we had a multi-unit exercise, and it was live fire, and it was very impressive. There was a lot of units there, and I was a crew chief in charge of the launch, and actually we had about 14 aircraft that launched, and I was able to launch the last aircraft, but everybody was kind of like in a formation ready for the CO, which was in the aircraft that I was launching. And as we were moving the aircraft out of the shocks, all of a sudden one of the live canisters of napalm came off the rack. And the napalm started rolling, and some of you know that napalm comes and it looks like a can of, a keg of beer. And when it's coming off, I immediately run toward the napalm because it was running toward a couple of the other aircrafts and rolling toward the other aircraft. And I run and put my foot on it, and I immediately close my eyes, and I don't know what's going to happen. It's either going to blow up or not. And I hold on for a little while. Nothing's happening. I feel kind of good. I open the eyes and I look around, and there was a lot of people for this multi-board launch. When I looked again, there was nobody in sight. At that point, I knew that I did something that a lot of people were laughing about for a while, because they said, when everybody was running one way, you went the other way. But I was the closest one. But I think each one of you could attest to many stories like that. But I just wanted to make sure it was one that had a great ending and that we all laughed about for quite a while. And we didn't, Captain, we didn't do McKellen, but we did a lot of drinks after that one. Make sure.
Yeah, and I think I'll just sort of try and follow that, and it's never easy. And Rolly's story is, it's not a story, that's exactly what he lived through, and those proud moments are what we remember. But in the military, the camaraderie is vital, and it extends beyond service. The commissioner's highlighted it's every day. So we have fun every day in the military. There is absolutely no doubt about it. And in an ideal world, it will be at someone else's expense, because that makes it all the more enjoyable. But I think I opened with the fact that I've served for 22 years. I nearly only served for about 3 months, and I've achieved a hell of a lot. But I nearly didn't get past my naval swimming test. And it was literally, we do 3 lengths of the swimming pool. You tread water for 3 minutes, you dive down, get the brick, and you come out. But you do it in overalls. And for those who know me, I'm 4'18", so I'm not the tallest of individuals. And I had a 6-foot person's overalls on, and I had to roll them up. And as I'm treading water for 3 minutes, I had 4 sea anchors, basically, because they unraveled while I was going on the overalls, and it just kept taking me down. So I nearly didn't survive more than 3 months in the Navy. If I'd have failed that swimming test on that day, I wouldn't be here today speaking to you. So I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing for you, but every day in the military is funny, because it's what we make it, and it's how we survive and get through some of those harder moments. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of light amusement.
Well, I'm glad you see that as amusing. That sounds very traumatic to me, but I'm glad for you that's fun.
I think it was made worse because my wife's a swimming teacher, so it didn't go down very well.
I'm glad you made it through. Come on, Master Chief Zimmer, did you have a story you want to share? We have quite a few questions coming in now, so perhaps if you want to share your story, and then we can go back to the audience questions. Sure,
mine'll be real quick. As you know, the Coast Guard has a very diverse mission set, unlike some of the the other services. And one that sticks out for me was a search and rescue case in the middle of the night. We had a Marine Corps Sea Knight helicopter out searching, looking for a missing kiteboarder, and he was out, cold night, North Carolina, and then you see a little light come flying out of the back of the helicopter because they had spotted him in the pitch black. So we were able to pick him up, and what made it pretty memorable was his family's dock was right on the shoreline. So we were able to deliver him back to his family, who was waiting on shore, and just seeing the reaction on their faces. And, in that moment, you're making a difference, and you're having a positive impact on people. So that's one of my memorable stories. Yeah, that must be very powerful when things like that occur. Thank you. Linaire, we have some questions. Did you want to moderate the first one in the queue?
Yes, we have Monique Selman, who would like to ask a question, and she is joining us now.
Hi, thanks everybody for being on the panel. It's very interesting. My question is to the guys in uniform. A, do you have to wear uniform every day? And B, can you, to the English guys, can you describe a typical day liaising of your job liaising with the US military?
Rolly, I'll start, and hopefully you can add to it. And Rolly and I spent some time in CENTCOM together a few years ago. So, you know, working with the US is fairly normal for us, and as normal can be. Wearing uniform, the first part of your question, Monique, the wearing of uniform every day is what's expected, and it's not an embarrassment by any means. And one of the things about being in the US in uniform in particular is the justified recognition that the US public give their service personnel in comparison to the UK. Wherever we go in uniform, and it could be we wear combats here because we're in an operational headquarters and a strategic headquarters, so we're on an operational footing. But the recognition from the US public is second to none, and the amount of times where we hear "thank you for your service" and it's genuine is the key point. It's something where we're never embarrassed to wear a uniform in public by any means of the imagination. And that, if I was to try and relate that to the UK, in many places in the UK for the US audience and those listening, we would not wear our uniform in public. And some of that is on the basis of the counter-terrorism level threat that's in place at the time. And because ultimately the UK public, up until in Iraq and Afghanistan, until we started seeing people on TV coming back from conflict and some horrible states, and those who sadly lost their lives, we didn't get the same levels of recognition from some of the public, and therefore you were never embarrassed to wear it, but you would only wear it within the confines of your working place in those cases. And from a liaison perspective, with a normal day liaison, there isn't such a thing. You know, we literally we have battle rhythms that we would operate to. So what I mean by that is there are set meetings, set schedules, but there is no 2 days the same. And I think for me, from a military perspective, that's what has made it, the variety, the fact that you are reacting and you're dealing with a set of circumstances, and you're doing that to the best of your ability, and what we've been trained to do and deal with. Rolly, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, mine's fairly similar in terms of response, actually, in that no 2 days are ever the same. I think I occupy a slightly unique position here as one of the embedded officers within US Central Command. So rather than being a liaison officer, I'm an embedded officer within US Central Command. What does that mean? That means, well, actually, if I wasn't doing this job, there'd be a US officer in charge, or a US officer doing my role. So I worked directly for the US headquarters, and I have a dotted line back to the headquarters in London. So I'm very much a US officer who just so happens to be British, but clearly I then provide information to the senior British military advisor out here, and I provide liaison through that chain, but very much working directly for the Americans. In terms of uniform, just echoing what Captain Stevens said there, walking around the US or coming back from work and just popping into the shops, the amount of people that will stop you to shake your hand and say thank you for your service is genuinely humbling. And it doesn't seem to be that people are doing it out of necessity, or that's because of what they've been told to do. It's out of genuine gratitude, I think, for service personnel. And I can't say whether or not that's widespread across the whole of the US. I've been to many US cities, but only served really in terms of uniform in Florida. But certainly here, more than anywhere else I think I've ever been, the gratitude for service personnel is outstanding.
Thank you. And yeah, interesting cultural differences that you touched on there. And that's actually one of our other questions that came in around, for those who have served in both the US and the UK, what, if any, are the differences in culture and organization? So I'm curious if there are any others that you would reference in terms of seeing those differences in the organizations that you've been a part of. And I guess that could go to either Captain Anderson or Lieutenant Colonel
no
Brady.
trouble. And sorry, and one thing again, for the non-Brits, we can talk for a living. So the last thing I want to do is continually transmit. It's unfair on the rest of the panelists. But from without doubt, from our perspective, what I find, the military in the UK has got smaller and smaller year on year. So we now have a navy around 30,000, and if you were to go back to the time of 1982 and the Falklands War in particular, we were sitting around 80, 90,000. So we've shrunk in a relatively short period of time considerably. Our ships, our aircraft, our tanks, our troops are diminishing at the same time as the Royal Marines have stayed a constant 8,000 for about the last 200 years, but that's another story. But they deserve to continue at this size and strength and continue to do very well. So what we have from a UK perspective, we have a smaller military, and you'll find that we will do multiple tasks. So we change jobs every 2 years. It comes back to my variety point, where that's a good thing in some respects, but you just then have a knowledge of things rather than being a master in something. So the key, therefore, is to use, if I'm using a ship as an example, the ship is a team. We had 250 people on board. Every single person contributed and had multiple roles. So it's all about teamwork, working together and maximizing the outcome and the operational effects. And what I see in the US in particular, and this is to me is a real positive, is where strength and depth, both in human resource and then in capacity in multiple areas. But what you have, the key differences ultimately are, you have some deep experts in certain areas. And the one thing the US military in particular, at every single level, and Command Master Chief Zimmer will have seen this, as is Commissioner Diaz, is where the education levels from joining the military in the US set people up for success. And whether that's in colleges or whether it's through professional courses, the level of competence is very, very high in many areas. So we get the mutual benefit across both areas, so that the sum of the parts in this case is much greater than the other aspects. So we're in a real healthy place when it comes to working together, and subtle differences, but ultimately collectively improvement.
Thank you. And Linnea, how are we doing on our questions? It seems like we do have some more in the queue, so I want to give as many people an opportunity as possible.
Yes, we do. We have David Archer, who would like to ask a question, and he's coming on board right now.
I'm just about the only member of my family not to have had a military career. I'd like to thank everyone on the call who has served for their service. My question is, a lot of British and American guys came back from the Middle East with catastrophic injuries, a lot of IEDs, etc. And there's been a lot of talk about reforms and improvements to the VA in the last few years. Do you think that we're taking good care of injured returning personnel? And I think that goes out to both sides.
And maybe Commissioner Diaz, aren't you doing some work with the county around this? Maybe you'd like to take the question first. And
David, that's a good question as to how we're taking care of those that have been taking care of us. And we have worked very closely with the VA. At one point, the VA was really in a more political position than it was helping in the level that it should have been helping. Today's VA is in a very different position. Today's VA is really out there doing everything it possibly can to help so many that are going through and trying to deal with their injuries, and whether it's physically or mentally or in any aspect. They have stepped it up, and I would tell you today is a different VA from the VA that I've seen back in the past. And I know Command Master Chief could address this too. And let me tell you, it's important that we stay vigilant on any of these hospitals that address our service people, and make sure that the latest and best of technologies is there, not outdated technology and so on. And that's been part of it. Back going to the VA before, you'd rather go anywhere than going to the VA. But that's changed today. At least the VA in Miami, it's a totally different position, and it's in a totally different position, and one that I admire. And I go there quite a bit, and have my executive director of the military board, Gus Cruz, that does a lot of service work there and goes a lot there too. And I deal with them on a one-on-one on the chamber that does the same, and many of the other people. So as far as helping and stepping it up, I believe they have, David, in a big way.
Yeah, I think they've made some outstanding improvements, and you see they really, we've essentially been at war for 19 years now. And the VA had to adapt to a changing clientele, if you will. So, they were very much serving World War II, Korea, Vietnam era veterans. And then you had a lot of the younger Iraq, Afghanistan veterans coming in for care with often different wounds and different injuries. And, the advances in battlefield medicine and the ability of the medical corps to save the lives of people that might not have made it in years past has resulted in a different level of care needed upon return. I think the services have done a lot better with transitional care, bringing people in, transitioning them over to VA care, reintegrating into society. But how can you ever do enough for somebody who is wounded or maimed in the service of their country? And I think you have a very dedicated cadre of medical professionals that want to serve veterans that are working in our VA system right now. And I think they continue to improve that care each day that we go along.
And I think, to add to that, the very, very similar to a UK perspective, but the subtle differences. And I think if you were to look back to the shell shock of World War I in particular, the UK lost 744,000 people in World War I, 384,000 in World War II. And since World War II, it's just over 7,000. There are a couple of reasons for that. One, less wars, less scale when it comes to it. But what Master Chief Zimmer was saying with respect to the gold in our medical facilities, what we have saved rightfully for our troops, those who may not have come back in previous conflicts. Now, the veteran services in the UK and the charities that are associated with that, and the armed forces associations, the physical injuries are much easier because the facilities are in place to rehabilitate. We've got excellent facilities, particularly since Iraq and Afghanistan. What we're finding now, even since the Falkland Wars in 1982, the mental injuries, the injuries that you cannot see are the most difficult. And one of the difficulties with the military in particular is being open, honest, and transparent. This fear of being, termed something that they would be embarrassed about, that is starting to improve, but we're nowhere near we need to be with respect to treatment of mental illness. And there's two sides to that. There is the obligation of the government, and then ultimately the individual needs to step forward. So we've got better awareness for those who are coming forward, but ultimately we don't have the same level of service available to them, unfortunately. And I think made worse in certain respects, and Rolly may, he'll be able to add to this from a Royal Marine Commando perspective. A lot of the youngsters that were going in there, boys and girls, were going in at 18, 19, 20 to see combat, and coming back having only served 3 to 5 years. So what will then hit them in 5, 10, 15, 20 years' time worries us and concerns us. And I think there's a lot more we need to do to ensure that we look after our people who deserve the treatment that they need.
Absolutely. I think we have advanced over the last sort of 15 years or so, and continue recognition now of non-physical injuries. The number of service personnel that take their own lives, both in the US and the UK, is still staggeringly high, and I think that's something that both the UK and the US are still trying to get our heads around and work out how we can better support the people that come back without those physical signs of injury. And I think the more work that we can do with the charities that are being set up all of the time, the more work we can do with them to better understand those injuries and better support those service personnel, that once they leave, especially once they leave the service, while they're still in the military, we can still have a handle on it. And it's slightly easier for us to recognize those signs, to identify people that may be struggling, those people that are in those high risk categories. It is the people that will leave, and just making sure that we continue to support them as they go through those difficult times.
Yes, thank you all for your comments on that. Great question, David. Thank you. I'm conscious of time. I think we have a lot more questions in the queue, but we may not have time to get to all of them. So maybe we could try and get through a couple more before we wrap up. Perhaps we could have one panelist respond to each question. So Linnea, what's our next question in the queue?
Yes, and so we have from Lieutenant Commander Scott Smithson of U.S. Southcom, who asks, next year is the 80th anniversary of the Atlantic Charter. As both the U.S. and the U.K. confront new and enduring challenges, how do we ensure the principles that we share remain the foundation of the international order?
That's an easy question.
It's probably, if you don't, I'll probably give it a quick go. Thanks for the question. And although we work in the same area, this is genuinely not teed up. So I'll have a word with them tomorrow to stop asking difficult questions. And the charter in particular, 80 years ago, coming up next year, where it was signed on boards. And I know this is me not trying to be smart. It's only because I've been involved in it. Her Majesty's ship Prince of Wales, then where the charter was signed. So next year, although some of it will be pomp and ceremony, the newest aircraft carrier in the United Kingdom Infantry will travel to the US coast, and the charter will be re-signed again by those who should be doing it on the same ship, Prince of Wales. So what it clearly demonstrates, and having sat in the previous Atlantic Future Forum, which happened a few weeks ago, it's a clear demonstration from ministerial levels down, both from the Prime Minister, ultimately the President, the Secretary of Defense in the US, and all the way to the working levels through every chain of command are as committed now as they were then, to ensuring that we can collectively work together, collaborate where appropriate, and when there is time for unilateral action, that is respected and recognised, and compromise is made. So we're moving forward in every direction, because ultimately everything we're trying to achieve, there is mutual interest at every level. So it's as strong now as it's ever been, and I think it will continue to grow in the future as we continue to move forward.
Great, thank you, Captain Anderson. Lynette, we have time for one more question.
Yes, we do. This question is from Susan Owens. UK Remembrance Day, as I understand, is about those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. Do you see the UK gradually moving toward a Remembrance Day and a day to thank active or retired servicemen and women, especially those who have come back from duty that have been injured? Or do you think it will remain remembering those who made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom?
I'll happily answer that one, actually. I think there will continue to be separation between a day to recognise those that have made the ultimate sacrifice with Remembrance Day, and now what we also have in the summer of each year, which is an Armed Forces Day, which does recognise both serving and veteran members of the armed forces. And that, I think, is the opportunity to recognise those people that are currently still serving and have served. Remembrance Day, I think will continue to have relevance, despite us not having as many casualties as there were in the First and Second World War. We need to remember that young men and women are on operations all day, every day, around the world. The Royal Marines have only had 1 year. 1967 was the only year since the Second World War that the Royal Marines have not been deployed on operations. So that's 1 year break in the last 75. And as we continue to go on operations, and young men and women will continue to put themselves in harm's way, and unfortunately, be that through operational casualties or training for operations, we'll continue to have people lose their lives. So I think it's important that we still continue to have that act of remembrance on Armistice Day, on the Remembrance Sunday, so that we can remember those that do make the ultimate sacrifice.
Thank you so much for those last comments. So unfortunately, we're right at time now, so we will need to wrap up. So apologies if we didn't get to your question. Please feel free to reach out to us afterwards, though, if you would like your question answered, and we'll be sure to coordinate with our panelists. So it remains for me to thank all of our panelists very much. We know you're very busy people, and we appreciate you taking an hour out of your day to be with us and to share your perspectives on these important events. Thank you so much to Consul General Nicolette Brent and to the team at the Consulate for partnering on this event. Thank you to Linaire for all your coordination, and I failed to mention that Linaire is also a Navy veteran. So thank you for your service as well, Linaire, and thank you to all of our panelists and many of our guests for your service as well. We appreciate you all. We appreciate everybody for joining us today. One last note, our Christmas party, we will have our traditional British Christmas party. It will be virtual this year, but it's going to be a great event, so please do mark your calendars. We did have a date change. It's going to be December 15th, which is Tuesday evening, but we are confirmed for that, so we hope we'll see some of you there. And so with that, I'll close this out today, but thank you so much, everyone, and please stay safe out there. Thank you very much.